My inspiration comes from the heavy burden of supporting my useless sister, Alara. She refuses to work, so I have to feed her. I read that sentence on Vogue's website while sitting in our basement, hand-stitching the hem of the exact dress my sister was wearing in the photo. I hadn't slept in 20 hours. I was the one making the clothes. She was the one getting the fame. Suddenly, a heavy fabric book slammed into the back of my head. My mother stood in the doorway. She didn't apologize. She just pointed a manicured finger at the white silk in my lap. "Stop reading garbage on your phone," she yelled. "And if you bleed on that dress, I am taking it out of your food money." The machine gun rhythm of the industrial serger filled the room. It shook the floorboards. It shook my bones. I paused to thread a new bobbin and caught my reflection in the sliding glass door that separated my studio from the garden. They called this room the glass house. It sounded elegant to the neighbors. In reality, it was a fishbowl where I worked, and they watched. In the reflection, I saw a ghost. Alara, 26 years old. I wore the same oversized black hoodie I had worn yesterday. My skin was the color of unbaked dough. I looked like something that lived underground. And in a way, I did. The exhaustion hit me in waves, dragging my mind back to the source. The original sin. I was 10 years old. The memory smelled like expensive lavender detergent and rubbing alcohol. Mom stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror, in the master bath. She gripped my chin, forcing me to look. She lifted her silk camisole. "Do you see it?" she hissed. I stared at the ridge of scar tissue on her lower belly. It was thick, ropey, and pale against her spray-tanned skin. "That is the tombstone of my career," she said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. I was 24. I was booked for the cover of Sports Illustrated. Then you happened. You wouldn't come out. You cut me open. You ruined my abs, my skin, my contract. She pushed me away, disgust radiating off her like heat. "You owe me, Alara. You took my spotlight. You will spend the rest of your life paying for it." That lecture wasn't a one-time event. It was the family scripture. I grew up believing I was a thief. I had stolen her beauty. I had stolen her future. So I became a living invoice. That was the logic of our household. I wasn't a child to be nurtured. I was a debt to be collected. I threw myself into the work. At 12, I was hemming her pants. At 15, I was sketching Kayla's pageant dresses. By 20, I was the entire production team for Bella's Soul. I worked 20 hours a day. I ate over the sink to save time. I slept on a cot in the corner of the studio because the walk to my bedroom wasted creative momentum, according to Mom. I looked down at my hands. They were a map of my servitude. The tips were callus pads, hard as plastic. A map of needle pricks dotted my left index finger. A constellation of red scabs. My back throbbed with a constant dull ache from hunching over the drafting table. I walked over to the design desk where Kayla had left her iPad. The screen glowed with a notification from her bank. A transfer of $5,000. Memo. Spa day, an inspiration trip. I tapped open her Instagram. There she was. My sister. The genius. She was lounging by a pool, skin flawless, holding a glass of rosé. The caption read, "The hardest part of design is the emotional toll. Pouring my soul into this collection. Send love." 5,000 likes in 10 minutes. I looked from her perfect, manicured hands on the screen to my own battered, bleeding fingers. For years, I believed Mom's math. I believed I owed them this. I believed if I worked hard enough, the ledger would balance, and they would finally love me. But staring at that photo, the equation shifted. I realized the debt wasn't real. It was a lie designed to keep the factory running. Mom thought I was still that guilt-ridden 10-year-old staring at her scar. She thought I was broken. She was right. I was broken. But she forgot that when you break a glass, you don't just get a mess, you get a weapon. The vedette gown stood on the dress form in the center of the room. It was a mountain of raw white silk, waiting for a soul. Mom wanted soft peonies. That was the brief. "Make it look like a garden in spring, Alara. Make it look like innocence." I stared at the fabric. Innocence was the last thing this family possessed. For the first time in 5 years, my hands didn't reach for the floral stencil. They hovered over my laptop keyboard. The shift inside me wasn't a spark. It was a cold, sliding click, like a lock engaging. I opened my design software. I ignored the folder labeled Botanicals. Instead, I pulled up a generative art script I had been toying with in secret. I began to draw. Not petals, but data. I drafted a series of sharp, jagged, geometric lines. Black on white. Chaotic. Aggressive. To the naked eye, it looked like glitch art, the kind of edgy, modern aesthetic that designers like Kayla pretended to understand but couldn't create. But to a camera lens, It was something else entirely. It was a high-density QR code, stretched and warped just enough to hide in plain sight, but mathematically perfect enough to be read by a scanner. I connected my laptop to the industrial jacquard loom. The machine hummed to life, a low growl that vibrated through the concrete floor. I loaded the black thread. I hit execute. The needles descended. They weren't just stitching thread. They were embedding a digital nervous system into the silk. I watched the pattern emerge. A stark, violent contrast to the soft white fabric. It looked like static on a dead television channel. Mom would hate it. But Kayla? Kayla would love it because she was desperate to be edgy. I would tell her it was the aesthetic of disruption. She would repeat the phrase to the press without knowing what it meant. The dress took 6 hours to weave. When it was done, it hung heavy and stiff, vibrating with hidden information. But the dress was only the bait. I needed a hook. The morning sun began to bleed through the high windows, illuminating the corner where 20 large cardboard boxes sat waiting. The VIP gift bags. Mom had barked earlier. 200 of them. Pack them before you sleep. And don't forget the sponsor vouchers. I walked over to the boxes. This was usually the part of the job that made me feel the most invisible, stuffing candles and perfume samples into bags for people who wouldn't even look at me. Today, it felt like arming a minefield. I pulled a stack of heavy cardstock from my printer tray. I had printed them while the loom was running. They were sleek, black cards with gold foil lettering. On the front, the same jagged glitch pattern. On the back, a simple instruction: scan for exclusive behind-the-scenes content. I picked up the first gift bag, a glossy tote for Mr. Sterling, the lead investor. I placed the perfume inside, then the candle. And finally, right on top, I slid the black card. I did it again. And again. 199 times. My hands moved with a rhythm that felt almost like a prayer. Perfume. Candle. Trap. Perfume. Candle. Trap. Mom thought she was exploiting my labor. She forgot that when you force someone to do the dirty work, you give them access to the dirt. I sealed the last bag and stood back. The room was silent, save for the cooling fan of the loom. I looked at the dress, then at the bags. You want a story for Vogue? I whispered to the empty room. I will give you a story. 7 days before the show, the atmosphere in the glass house shifted from exhaustion to mania. The air smelled of burnt hairspray and expensive champagne. Paula kicked the studio door open. She wasn't walking. She was vibrating. "It is done," she screamed. She slapped a thick stack of legal documents onto my cutting table, scattering my pins. Sterling Capital. $2 million. She grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging into my skin. Her pupils were blown wide, high on greed. They aren't just buying the collection, Alara. They are acquiring the brand. They want Bella's soul under their luxury umbrella. Mr. Sterling is signing the acquisition deal immediately after the finale. I looked at the contract. The number on the front page had 6 zeros. It was enough money to buy freedom. It was enough money to disappear. "There is just one tiny detail," Paula said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "To make the show Vogue-worthy, I needed liquid cash fast. So, I took out a bridge loan." My stomach dropped. A bridge loan? Against what? The house, the studio, everything. She waved a hand dismissively. "It is a hard money loan. High interest, due in full 24 hours after the show. But who cares? The Sterling wire transfer hits Monday morning. We will be rich enough to burn this house down if we want to." She had gambled our entire existence on a signature that hadn't happened yet. If the deal fell through, we wouldn't just be poor. We would be homeless by sunrise. "Now," she said, sliding a single sheet of paper toward me. "I need you to handle the paperwork." I looked at the document. It was a non-disclosure and intellectual property waiver. The clauses were brutal. By signing, I admitted that I was merely a technical assistant, that I had created nothing, owned nothing, and that all designs were the sole intellectual property of Kayla and Paula. It was backdated 5 years. "Sign it," she commanded. "Sterling's lawyers need a clean chain of title." She pulled a Mont Blanc pen from her blazer pocket and uncapped it. But before I could touch the paper, she whipped out her phone. "Wait, content opportunity." She held the phone up high, framing us both in the shot. She put on her momager smile. Bright, teeth-baring, predatory, working hard with the team. Empire building. Bella Soul. We made it. She was looking at herself in the screen. She wasn't looking at me. I took the pen. I am right-handed. My mother knew this. She had spent years slapping my knuckles with a ruler whenever my handwriting got messy. But right now, her eyes were glued to the filter on her face. I switched the pen to my left hand. My grip was awkward. The tip of the pen scratched against the paper. I forced my hand to move, creating a jagged, shaky scrawl that looked nothing like my legal signature. It was a signature made under duress. A signature that any forensic handwriting expert would flag as an anomaly in seconds. Done, I said. Perfect. She snatched the paper away without looking at it, hitting post on her video at the same time. Keep working. We make history on Friday. She spun on her heel and marched out, the champagne bottle swinging in her hand. I waited until her footsteps faded up the stairs. Then, I locked the studio door. I sat down at my computer and opened a private browser window. I navigated to the Global Digital Rights Management Database, the same registry used by digital artists and NFT creators to prove provenance. I uploaded the file, glitch pattern source code.png. I filled in the metadata fields. Title, the cost of production. Artist, Alara Vance. Date of creation, 6 months ago. I uploaded the supporting evidence files I had been saving. The audio recording of her insults, the scan of the termination letter, the time-lapse video of me weaving the code. I hovered the mouse over the register button. Paula had her contract. Now, I had mine. I clicked. A green shield icon appeared on the screen. Registration confirmed. Timestamp locked. In the eyes of the law, the trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for them to walk into it. Fashion Week didn't smell like glamour. It smelled of ozone, burnt hairspray, and desperate ambition. From my vantage point in the lighting booth, high above the runway, the crowd looked like a sea of black blazers and glowing phone screens. They were waiting to be fed. Down in the wings, panic had set in. I adjusted the monitor feed to camera 2, zooming in on the backstage holding area. Kayla was hyperventilating. She was clutching the hem of the vedette dress. The showstopper. A loose thread dangled near her ankle. "Mom," she hissed, her voice cracking. "The hem is falling. I can't walk in this." Paula didn't even look at the dress. She was too busy adjusting her own lapel mic. She had arranged to give a live commentary to the investors during the show. "Use duct tape, Kayla," Paula snapped. "And suck in your stomach. Mr. Sterling is in the front row. Do not embarrass me." Kayla's hands shook as she fumbled for a roll of gaffer tape. She looked small. For a second, I almost pitied her. She was a fraud, yes, but she was also just a prop in Paula's play, same as me. But then I remembered the Vogue article. I designed to feed her. My pity evaporated. I shifted my gaze to the front row. Center stage sat Mr. Sterling. He looked like a shark in a bespoke suit. Calm, predatory, and expensive. Beside him, Paula slid into her seat. She leaned in close, whispering something that made him nod. She was charming him. She was selling him a lie wrapped in silk. "Lights," the stage manager barked into my headset. "Q1. Go." I pushed the fader. The house lights died. The room plunged into absolute darkness. Then, the bass dropped. Thump. It wasn't the usual classical violins Paula loved. I had swapped the track file an hour ago. This was heavy, grinding industrial techno. It sounded like a machine breathing. It sounded like a loom. Thump. Thump. A single spotlight pierced the dark, hitting the runway entrance. The first model walked out. She wore the glitch A-line skirt. The black geometric code seemed to vibrate under the stark white light. A ripple went through the audience. Heads tilted. Phones raised. This wasn't the soft, floral Bella's soul they expected. It was aggressive. It was alien. It was working. I watched Paula on the monitor. She stiffened at the music, her eyes darting to the tech booth. She knew I had changed the track, but she couldn't stop it now. Not without causing a scene. So, she pivoted. I saw her lean toward Mr. Sterling. I turned up the gain on her lapel mic feed so I could hear her. "I decided to pivot last minute," she whispered smoothly. The florals felt safe. I wanted to explore the intersection of humanity and technology. I call it the digital scar. She was improvising. Taking credit for a concept she didn't understand. Stealing a design she couldn't create. "It is brilliant," Sterling replied. "Very future forward." Paula beamed. She was winning. She thought she was a genius. She had no idea that with every step the models took, she was broadcasting a confession. Every jagged line on those skirts was a registered trademark of Alara Vance. She wasn't just hosting a fashion show. She was documenting a federal crime. The show built to its crescendo. The music got faster. The cuts got sharper. And then, it was time for the finale. Kayla stepped into the light. She wore the vedette gown. The full body code shimmered. She walked stiffly, terrified of the tape on her hem. But to the audience, it looked like robotic affectation. They loved it. She reached the end of the runway. She posed. I looked down at my control board. My finger hovered over the master override button. Paula was clapping. Sterling was standing up. Smile, mother, I whispered. I pressed the button. Kayla stepped onto the runway for the finale. The vedette gown flowed around her like liquid static. Under the stark white lights, the black geometric code woven into the silk seemed to writhe. She reached the end of the catwalk and struck her pose. Hands on hips. Chin up. The perfect mannequin. In the tech booth, I rested my hand on the master fader. Down in the front row, Paula was clapping so hard her bracelets rattled. She turned to Mr. Sterling, mouthing the words, "It is a masterpiece." She was right. It was a masterpiece. Just not the one she thought. I slammed the fader down. The industrial techno cut out instantly. The silence hit the room like a physical blow. At the same second, I punched the lighting cue. The warm, flattering runway lights died. A single, harsh clinical spotlight blasted onto Kayla, freezing her in a pool of white exposure. She blinked, blinded, her smile faltering. I hit the spacebar. The massive LED screen behind her, which had been displaying the brand logo, flickered and changed. A single sentence appeared in 50-foot-tall black letters. Check your gift bags. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, curiosity won. The rustle of paper filled the silence as 200 VIPs reached into their black totes. They pulled out the cards I had packed. I watched Mr. Sterling. He held the card up to the light, frowning at the glitch pattern. He pulled out his phone. He opened his camera app. He scanned the code. Around him, a sea of phones rose. The room lit up with hundreds of tiny glowing screens. The sound of digital handshakes rippled through the venue. The links opened. And then, the audio loaded. It started as a murmur from the front row, then swelled into a chaotic, echoing roar as 200 phones began playing the same file out of sync. My mother's voice filled the room. You are a ugly scar. A drain on my life. You ruined my body. You owe me. The recording looped. A drain on my life. You owe me. Paula froze. Her face went slack. She looked around, trying to locate the source. But the source was everywhere. It was in the hands of the editors. It was in the hands of the influencers. It was in the pocket of the man about to buy her company. I hit the next cue on the projector. The screen shifted. The text disappeared. In its place, a high-definition scan of a document appeared. The termination letter. Agency notice. Contract terminated for cause. Reason. Unprofessional conduct. Chronic lateness. Theft of props. The date was circled in red. It was 2 years before I was born. The lie about the scar, the foundation of my guilt, the justification for my servitude, crumbled in high resolution. I watched Paula read it. She shrank. The arrogant momager evaporated, replaced by a terrified woman caught in a 20-year-old lie. But I wasn't done. I hit the final cue. The screen changed again. This time, it displayed a government certificate. United States Copyright Office. Title, The Cost of Production. Registrant, Ilara Vance. Timestamp, 6 months ago. Below it, a side-by-side comparison. The digital file of the glitch pattern, next to a close-up of the dress Kayla was wearing. Match confirmed. I leaned back in my chair. In the world of narcissists, truth is malleable. They gaslight. They spin. They rewrite history until you question your own sanity. In the court of public opinion, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. But in the court of intellectual property law, the timestamp is God. There is no spinning a federal registration date. There is no gaslighting a blockchain entry. Down on the floor, the realization hit. Mr. Sterling stood up. He looked at the phone in his hand, then at the screen, then at the dress. He was a businessman. He understood risk, and he understood that he was currently sitting at a crime scene of copyright infringement. He turned to Paula. She grabbed his arm. I could see her desperate mouthing. It is a hack. It is a mistake. She is crazy. Sterling peeled her fingers off his suit jacket like she was something sticky. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a long, rectangular envelope. The ceremonial check. The $2 million. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He simply held the check up so Paula could see it. Then, with a clean, sharp motion, he tore it in half. The sound of the ripping paper was quiet. But to Paula, it must have sounded like a gunshot. He dropped the pieces on the floor. This is a breach of the indemnification clause, he said. His voice carried in the stunned silence. You sold me stolen goods. The deal is dead. He turned to his legal team. Call the office. Kill the wire. And get me out of here. Kayla was sobbing on the runway. still frozen in the spotlight, wrapped in the evidence of her own fraud. Paula was on her knees, trying to tape the pieces of the check back together. I stood up. I picked up my bag. I walked out of the tech booth and down the back stairs. I didn't look back at the stage. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what ruin looked like. I had been living in it for 26 years. Now, it was their turn. The fall of the House of Vance didn't happen in slow motion. It happened with the brutal, bureaucratic speed of a guillotine. Because the acquisition deal with Sterling Capital died on the runway, the bridge loan my mother had taken out against our home defaulted the very next morning. The terms of the loan were predatory, written for desperate people who expected a miracle. There were no miracles left. 48 hours after the show, a sheriff's deputy taped a foreclosure notice to the front door of the glass house. He didn't knock. He just smoothed the orange tape over the wood and walked away. The legal fallout was precise and devastating. Mr. Sterling didn't just walk away. He sued for damages. The lawsuit cited civil fraud, breach of contract, and misrepresentation of assets. The amount sought was $3.2 million, enough to ensure that Paula would never own a credit card again, let alone a company. Kayla was dropped by her modeling agency before the sun went down on Saturday. The influencers who had praised her genius deleted their posts. The internet, which had once worshipped her curated life, turned on her with the ferocity of a starving animal. They dissected the glitch video frame by frame, analyzing my mother's cruel voice recorded on the audio track. They lost the house. They lost the studio. They lost the cars. I wasn't there to see them pack. I heard from a neighbor that they left with 2 suitcases and a box of unsold shoes, waiting on the curb for a rideshare that took 20 minutes to arrive. 3 months later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. It wasn't a mansion, but it had floor-to-ceiling windows that faced east, catching the morning sun. I had bought the furniture myself. I paid the rent myself. I answered the phone but didn't speak. Elara? The voice was thin. It sounded older, cracked by stress and cheap cigarettes. It was my mother. Elara, please don't hang up, she said. Her voice wavered, slipping into that familiar manipulative whine she used to use on investors. We are staying at a motel off the interstate. It is filthy. Kayla won't stop crying. We need help. I know you got the licensing deal. I saw it in the news. I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot and bitter, just the way I liked it. We are family, she continued, her desperation rising. I pushed you because I saw your potential. I made you who you are. Doesn't that count for something? You owe me, Elara. You still owe me. I looked at the scar on my thumb, the one from the needle that had pierced me the night I wrote the code. It had healed into a thin white line. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel fear. I felt absolutely nothing. It was the indifference of a stranger listening to a telemarketer. I don't owe you a penny, I said softly. The debt is paid. I ended the call. Then, I blocked the number. I walked back inside. On my desk sat a contract. It wasn't a waiver of rights. It was a licensing agreement with Sterling Capital. Mr. Sterling had approached me a week after the show. He didn't want the brand Bella's Soul. That name was toxic now. He wanted the art. He wanted the cost of production. He had licensed my geometric patterns for a global campaign. The advance check sitting next to the contract was for $75,000. It was made out to Elara Vance, creative director. I picked up the pen. For the first time in my life, my hand didn't shake. I signed my name, my real name, in bold, confident, black ink. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was the architect of my own life. They told me I was invisible. They told me I was a burden. They told me that family means sacrificing yourself until there is nothing left but a shell. But I learned something in the basement. Blood doesn't make you family. Blood just makes you related. Family is loyalty. Family is respect. And if the people who share your DNA treat you like an employee they can't fire, you have the right to hand in your resignation. You are not a prop in someone else's play. You are not a background character in their success story. If you are listening to this, and you are sitting in the dark, doing the work while someone else takes the light, stop. Put down the needle. Open the door. Walk away. Because the only thing more expensive than leaving is staying.